The trap of universal approval. Why your desperation to fit in is destroying your peace. There is an invisible crisis sweeping through countless lives today. Millions wake up each morning, go through the motions, interact with others, smile on cue, and maintain a flawless exterior, while internally feeling completely estranged from who they are. This dissolution does not happen overnight. It creeps in through the quiet dread of being rejected, judged, or falling short of other people's expectations. To cope, people bend, disguise their feelings, and silence their personal truth. Bit by bit, they construct a life that satisfies society, but feels utterly foreign to their own soul. Then, during a solitary moment unnoticed by the world, an inescapable question emerges from deep within. When did I start living someone else's life? Ancient spiritual insights teach us that profound misery does not stem from external hardships, but from how far we wander from our inner core. This is a journey about recognizing that subtle drift and discovering the path back to your true self. You do not lose your identity in a single moment. You misplace it in tiny, daily acts of forgetting who you are. It is never a sudden collapse. No one wakes up to find their sense of self entirely gone. The process is much quieter, slower, and virtually imperceptible as it unfolds. It takes root in ordinary, seemingly trivial choices. You say yes when every fiber of your being is screaming no. You stay quiet when an internal voice urges you to speak up. You laugh at jokes that make you uncomfortable and agree with things just to maintain a fragile harmony. Because there are no immediate consequences, you carry on without a second thought. Yet, deep inside, a profound shift is occurring. Every time you dismiss your intuition, you send yourself a clear message. Your feelings do not matter right now. Repeat this often enough, and that inner voice will gradually fatten not because it has vanished, but because you have trained yourself to ignore it. Over time, your choices become driven by a desire to avoid discomfort rather than a commitment to authenticity. You prioritize external harmony while sacrificing your internal peace. This is the birthplace of self-alienation. On the outside, you continue to function perfectly. You converse, socialize, and fulfill your obligations. Nothing seems broken to the observer, but internally, you feel like a ghost in your own existence, present in body, but entirely absent in spirit. The real danger is how effortlessly you adapt to this self-negation until it becomes your default setting. You no longer ask what truly resonates with your heart. Instead, you ask what will keep the peace. You stop consulting your own values and start scanning the room for approval. Slowly, your authentic voice isn't destroyed. It is simply buried under the weight of external expectations, leaving an unexplainable emptiness. You can be surrounded by crowds yet feel completely isolated. The missing piece isn't out there in the world, it is your own consciousness. True awareness is not about tracking the reactions of others, but maintaining a steady vigilance over your own inner state. We do not lose ourselves in grand tragedies, but in the thousands of minor instances where we fail to honor our truth. Fortunately, the way back is just as quiet as the departure. It begins with micro-moments of mindfulness, pausing before you give an answer, listening to the physical knot of discomfort in your chest, and allowing your genuine voice to be heard, even if it feels clumsy at first. You do not reclaim your life by transforming into a stranger. You reclaim it by refusing to forget the person you have always been. The trap of universal approval. The more you exhaust yourself trying to be everything to everyone, the less energy you have left for your own soul. There is a deep, bone-weary fatigue that comes from trying to satisfy every demand around you. Initially, you label this behavior as generosity, flexibility, or emotional maturity. You pride yourself on being the one who always compromises, apologizes, and sacrifices. You become the reliable pillar because you dread the thought of letting anyone down. Yet, imperceptibly, your entire universe begins to anchor itself to how other people view you. You start your day with an unspoken burden of pressure to say the right things, act flawlessly, ensure everyone else is comfortable. You shoulder emotional baggage that was never yours to carry. And in the process of keeping everyone else whole, you fail to notice that you are fracturing into pieces. The human psyche can only bend so much before it quietly snaps from within. When your sole purpose becomes satisfying others, you lose touch with your own reality. Your path is no longer guided by personal values, but by a matrix of anxieties: fear of isolation, fear of friction, and fear of being excluded. The ultimate irony is that no matter how much of yourself you give away, it is never deemed enough. Once people grow accustomed to your endless availability, your tolerance, and your self-denial, your sacrifices become their baseline expectation. What was once seen as a gift is now viewed as your duty, leaving you imprisoned by a role built on your own self-abandonment. You force a smile through emotional exhaustion and listen to others while your own mind is drowning. One day you wake up empty, not because you loved too deeply, but because you gave yourself away without keeping anything for your own survival. Spiritual wisdom teaches that fixation on the impermanent breeds suffering, and few things are more unstable than the craving for constant validation. When your self-worth is hostage to external opinions, your peace becomes incredibly fragile. Every passing mood shifts your ground, every critique wounds you, and every disappointment feels fatal. You hand over the emotional remote control of your life to the world around you. This is how people vanish in plain sight. They become brilliant at navigating the emotions of others, while remaining completely illiterate regarding their own internal landscape. They can comfort a stranger, but have no idea how to soothe their own aching heart. The harder they try to fit in everywhere, the more homeless they become within their own skin. True liberation begins with a stark realization. You were never put on this earth to manage the comfort of everyone else. You are not obligated to make sure everyone understands your motives, nor should you diminish your spirit so that others don't feel insecure. A life spent performing for acceptance isn't a life of service, it is emotional servitude disguised as virtue. The moment you step off that treadmill, your internal world settles. Decisions become clear, your presence carries weight, and you stop begging for validation. For the first time in years, you stop scattering your energy among the masses and start feeling integrated once more, quieting the noise of others. When your mind is cluttered with the verdicts of other people, your own journey fades into obscurity. The most tragic way to lose your life isn't through external misfortune, but by allowing your mind to be colonized by public opinion. It starts innocently enough. You overanalyze a casual conversation long after it has ended, wondering if you came across as odd. You worry more about how someone perceived an interaction than how you actually felt during it. You alter your clothing, your speech, and your choices to evade criticism. Gradually, your inner sanctuary becomes a chaotic courtroom of outside voices. You wake up anticipating demands, spend your day dodging disapproval, and perform for an imaginary audience even when you are completely alone. This is how your authentic life gets pushed to the margins. By focusing entirely outward, you stop asking what brings you peace, what satisfies your spirit, and what feels genuinely honest. Instead, you are haunted by questions of acceptance and change. Too many lives are dictated by an unexamined fear of judgment. This anxiety dictates careers, sustains draining relationships, and forces people to hide their brightest qualities just to stay accepted. After decades of editing their behavior for the crowd, they literally do not know who they are once the audience leaves. Human opinions are the most fickle foundation upon which to build an identity. People are inherently inconsistent. Their moods drift, their perspectives shift, and their biases cloud their judgment. They will applaud you today and condemn you tomorrow. If your equilibrium relies on their praise, you will never find rest. You become an emotional leaf in the wind, ruined by a cold look, devastated by a minor rejection, and anxious over someone's silence. Your internal weather no longer belongs to you, it is dictated by the reactions of the world. This creates a profound, systemic loneliness. You may be deeply connected to what everyone else thinks, but you are entirely disconnected from your own heartbeat. You can recite everyone's expectations of you, but you cannot name your own deepest needs. You are an expert on the world around you, but a stranger to your own soul. This is why material success or social popularity still leaves people feeling entirely hollow. Their minds are never allowed to rest in their own presence. They are trapped in a cycle of predicting feedback, seeking validation, and managing impressions. Peace is found when you stop viewing your identity through the lens of other people's perceptions. You must stop defending yourself against every trivial opinion, and stop treating every critique as an absolute truth. Not every external judgment deserves an invitation into your mental space. No one else can experience your life, for you can cultivate the stillness required to hear your own heart. When you do, the crowd thins out, your choices become honest, and you stop living as a mere echo of your surroundings, guarding your inner space. Not every voice deserves an audience in your mind. Many are simply distractions you have mistaken for truth. A critical milestone in maturity is realizing that your mental space is highly selective property. Yet, most people treat their minds like an open highway, letting every passing comment leave its trash. They replay criticisms, internalize careless judgments, and brood over slights in the quiet hours of the night. Consequently, their internal world becomes congested with the opinions of people who have no business directing their destiny. Peace is eroded not by massive catastrophes, but by the relentless drip of mental static by hoarding words that should have been discarded the moment they were uttered. Someone misinterprets your actions, and you carry that burden for months. Someone hurls an unfair critique, and you let it alter your self-worth. You absorb their projected insecurities and begin to doubt your own value. The truth is, many people speak not from a place of wisdom, but from their own unhealed wounds, envy, or frustration. They judge your progress simply because your evolution highlights their own stagnation. But when you lack internal grounding, every external comment carries undue weight. You begin absorbing toxic energy that was never yours to process. Your peace becomes entirely volatile when you give society the power to define you. You find yourself over-explaining your life, living defensively, and constantly tracking perceptions until you hit a wall of absolute exhaustion. This fatigue doesn't stem from the hardships of life itself, but from the sheer weight of carrying unnecessary voices. There will always be individuals who critique you without ever knowing your substance, people who summarize your entire soul based on a single moment, or view you through the narrow lens of their own limitations. To let their words pierce your spirit is to leave your inner fortress completely unguarded. Your mind is a sanctuary, and access must be earned. Just because someone has an opinion does not mean you are required to digest it. You do not need to shrink yourself to fix someone else's misunderstanding. Some words offer genuine guidance, while others are merely psychological noise. Discerning the difference changes everything. A tranquil life isn't one devoid of negativity. It belongs to someone who refuses to let negativity take root inside them. If you carry everyone's baggage, your own truth will eventually suffocate. This is where the power of intentional silence comes in, not a silence born of cowardice, but one rooted in absolute clarity. It is the quiet resolve to stop begging for validation from those incapable of seeing your worth, to stop fighting battles against every misconception, and to trust your inner compass over fleeting feedback. Protecting your emotional well-being is a fundamental necessity. Your internal thoughts dictate your emotional reality and form the blueprint of your self-image. Be fiercely protective of what you allow past your borders. Not every critique requires your attention, and not every judgment deserves a home in your heart. Ultimate freedom is letting careless words glide past you without ever allowing them to dictate who you are. The courage to exist naturally. You will never uncover your true self as long as you are constantly revising your identity for public consumption. It is a quiet tragedy when someone spends their entire existence tailoring their personality to please the crowd, only to realize they have become a stranger to themselves. It feels innocent at first, modifying your tone depending on the group, suppressing thoughts that might cause waves, or softening your stance to avoid friction. You become hypervigilant about your presentation, your feelings, and your natural rhythm. Gradually, your life ceases to be an authentic journey and transforms into a carefully managed performance. You stop asking whether a choice aligns with your soul and start asking whether it will enhance your popularity. People don't lose their authenticity because they are deceptive or weak. They do it because they were conditioned to believe that compliance is safer than honesty. So the editing process begins. They tone down their intensity to seem more manageable, alter their career paths to fit traditional molds, downplay their ambitions to avoid standing out, and mask their suffering so no one else feels inconvenienced. After a lifetime of curation, the line between the actor and the individual becomes completely blurred. This creates a profound inner hollow, Because the human spirit grows incredibly weary of maintaining a facade. There is a deep, suffocating exhaustion in policing your every move, overthinking your reputation, and twisting your identity to suit the comfort of those around you. You can feel utterly alone in a crowded room, not due to a lack of company, but because the version of you standing there is an artificial construct. Clarity arrives the moment you shed these illusions. The belief that you must endlessly adapt your shape to deserve love, respect, or a sense of belonging is a lie. True contentment is never found on a stage. No matter how loud the applause, a haunting whisper remains. Would they still accept me if I showed them my raw reality? This doubt plagues many through their relationships, causing them to filter every sentence and walk on eggshells. It drives them into careers chosen for status rather than fulfillment, leaving them feeling like imposters in their own lives. Mistaking this self-curtailment for maturity is a devastating error. Shrinking yourself isn't wisdom, and suffocating your truth isn't peacemaking. It is a slow, silent form of emotional suffering. Your genuine self cannot thrive in a psychic cage of constant curation. A flower cannot blossom if its petals are continuously trimmed to match someone else's vision of symmetry. And the human soul cannot awaken under the constant threat of rejection. True recovery begins with a quiet, unyielding honesty with yourself, the willingness to identify what genuinely depletes your energy, to pinpoint where you fake it the most, and to acknowledge the massive amount of vitality you waste chasing acceptance. The most peaceful version of you will never be the one that executes a flawless performance for the public. It will be the version that finally drops the armor and dares to exist naturally. When you stop editing your soul for approval, your mental load lightens, your emotional clarity returns, and your connections become authentic. You stop living as a brand and start living as a human being, tasting the immense relief of no longer running away from your own reflection. Reclaiming authenticity. Compulsive people-pleasing is not an act of generosity, it is the systematic surrender of your own identity. There is a massive gulf between genuine kindness and losing your soul in the pursuit of keeping everyone comfortable. Yet, many spend their lives confusing the two. They assume that endless self-sacrifice makes them noble, that saying yes to every demand is proof of love, and that absorbing everyone else's emotional storm is a sign of strength. In reality, they are running on empty. This urge to please doesn't flow from a place of inner peace. It stems from deep-seated anxieties, fear of conflict, fear of being abandoned, fear of letting someone down, or fear of becoming irrelevant. To keep those fears at bay, they barter away their identity piece by piece. They ignore their physical limits, suppress their anger, remain available when they are completely drained, and tolerate mistreatment just to avoid disrupting the status quo. Eventually, this self-sabotage becomes their entire identity. They become categorized as the one who never complains, the one who always bends, and the one who always absorbs the blow. While the world applauds their selflessness, no one witnesses the internal erosion taking place. In ensuring everyone else's comfort, they abandon their own, leaving no one to look after their soul. This is the toxic paradox of people-pleasing. You become so preoccupied with being accepted that you forget to check what your own spirit requires to survive. You become emotionally present for the entire world, while becoming completely absent for yourself, ultimately rendering you a ghost in your own life story. When your sense of worth is anchored to external validation, your behavior becomes entirely defensive. You stop operating from a place of truth and start operating from a place of fear, which slowly reshapes your character. It teaches you to swallow your words when you should speak up, to apologize for boundaries that require no excuse, and to carry emotional baggage that belongs to others. Those who spend their lives pleasing others are often the loneliest souls, not because they lack companionship, but because the person the world loves is merely a curated caricature. The real individual remains locked away beneath layers of exhaustion. Over time, a bitter resentment begins to brew within the heart, not out of selfishness, but because the human soul cannot endure without basic honesty, boundaries, and self-respect. You cannot indefinitely pour from an empty cup without receiving rest, reciprocity, or emotional safety. When balance is lost, your spirit shuts down. You become emotionally detached, lose interest in your passions, experience unexplainable irritability, and feel profoundly hollow, despite doing everything right for everyone else. This is the consequence of misplaced compassion. Genuine kindness never demands your self-destruction, and true empathy must include yourself. There is nothing virtuous about erasing your own existence to keep someone else comfortable. Those who truly value you will never demand that you destroy your identity as the price of their connection. You do not have to suffer to validate your worth, nor do you need to carry the world's emotional gravity to deserve love. Boundaries are not acts of hostility, they are the ultimate expression of self-respect. Saying no doesn't make you cruel, and taking space doesn't make you selfish. It makes you honest, allowing your kindness to finally spring from genuine abundance rather than raw fear. The power of letting go. Your true peace begins the moment you stop trying to justify your existence to individuals who are committed to misinterpreting you. One of the most futile uses of your limited lifetime is trying to convince others that you have a right to be who you are. You explain your choices, defend your boundaries, clarify your motives, and dissect your silence, hoping that the perfect combination of words will finally force them to see your heart clearly. The harsh reality is that some people have already written your narrative before you even open your mouth. They view you strictly through the lens of their own unhealed trauma, envy, or personal biases. No amount of eloquence can bring clarity to an individual who has already chosen to see you through a distorted lens. Yet, many remain trapped in this exhausting cycle, over-explaining their lives, feeling guilty for protecting their peace, and living with chronic anxiety over unfair assumptions. When you take on the impossible responsibility of managing how everyone perceives you, your soul never truly rests. You live on the defensive. Every difference of opinion feels like a crisis, and every misunderstanding feels like an urgent fire you must extinguish. This creates a state of perpetual internal friction. Suffering intensifies whenever we try to control variables outside our jurisdiction, and other people's perceptions are entirely beyond our control. You can act with complete integrity and still be slandered. You can love deeply and still be cast as the villain in someone else's narrative. This is an unavoidable truth of the human experience, and resisting it only drains your vital energy. Years are wasted trying to correct every false impression, begging for understanding from people who aren't even listening. Peace is reclaiming that energy and realizing you are not the custodian of public opinion. You do not exist to shrink yourself into digestible pieces for the comfort of others. You are not required to spend your life proving your value to those determined to minimize you. Some people will only tolerate you when you remain small, predictable, and silent. The moment you stand in your power and establish boundaries, they will label you as difficult, cold, or self-centered. But remember, your growth will always look like a threat to those who benefited from your lack of boundaries. This is why internal tranquility requires immense bravery, the courage to let people harbor an incorrect version of you without trying to change their minds, the courage to stop defending your basic right to exist, and the stable conviction to hold your ground even when the applause dies down. True freedom isn't achieved when everyone finally understands you. It is achieved when you no longer need their understanding to feel complete. There is a profound serenity that comes when you stop asking for permission to live your life. You stop explaining your path, justifying your healing, and apologizing for protecting your mental health. Your mind slows down. You no longer wake up consumed by how you are scored by the world, nor do you spend your nights agonizing over past conversations. You put down the exhausting burden of trying to be perfectly understood. You accept that some will see your essence deeply, while others never will, and you refuse to let that reality disrupt your inner core. You stop abandoning your soul just to buy a temporary fragile seat at someone else's table, returning home to yourself. The day you reconnect with your true self is the day you finally exit the stage of other people's expectations and step into your own reality. There is a quiet, monumental turning point in life that alters everything. It is the moment you simply become too tired to keep abandoning yourself, too tired of molding your existence around what others want, too tired of hosting opinions that aren't yours, too tired of pretending to be fine while your soul feels completely detached. and too tired of shrinking just to be tolerated. Deep within your consciousness, a realization crystallizes. You have spent your precious life viewing yourself through the eyes of the world. You were so busy tracking whether you were enough for them that you forgot to check if you were even present in your own existence. This awakening brings an initial wave of grief as you realize how many years were sacrificed for validation rather than peace. How many major decisions were born of fear rather than truth, and how often you silenced your own heart to avoid losing someone else. But suddenly, you understand the source of that heavy, persistent ache in your chest. Your spirit was never designed to live estranged from its home. Awakening occurs the moment you choose clarity over comfort. No amount of social praise can substitute for a genuine internal connection. You can be highly celebrated and still feel empty. You can be surrounded by a massive network and still feel entirely alone. True peace isn't achieved when you finally become acceptable to the world. It is achieved when you finally become acceptable to yourself. This return isn't a loud, theatrical transformation. It is a quiet, deliberate homecoming. It manifests in small, daily choices. The moment you stop apologizing for your limits. The moment you trust your gut without looking for external confirmation. The moment you stop requiring reassurance to feel worthy. And the moment you let yourself exist without constant curation. Initially, this newfound autonomy might feel deeply unsettling. When you have spent a lifetime ignoring your own needs, listening to them can feel almost selfish. You are addicted to looking outward for answers, using reactions as a compass, and measuring your value by your utility to others. But gradually, the storm breaks. Your mind grows tranquil, your emotions crystallize, and your decisions cease to be driven by anxiety. You stop chasing those who walk away. Stop letting critics break your foundation, and break free from the prison of external expectations. Your life finally begins to taste like your own. You learn to welcome silence instead of fleeing from it. You rebuild the broken bridge to your intuition and start making choices aligned with your deepest values rather than popular opinion. There is an immense, breathtaking freedom in dropping the performance, in no longer waking up and asking what mask you must wear to be loved today. Instead, you face the mirror and ask a far more revolutionary question. What is true to my soul right now? That single shift changes your entire trajectory. You stop merely surviving on the terms of others and start living from your own internal truth. The world will still have its chaos. People will still misinterpret you, and some connections will still fade. But these external shifts will no longer destabilize your foundation. Because your identity is no longer held hostage by the world, it is safely anchored within your own being. This is genuine freedom, not the absence of life's storms, but the absolute refusal to betray yourself ever again just to survive them. Your life was never meant to be an audition for the world. It was meant to be lived as the most honest expression of who you already are.